So, chapter 19, legal descriptions and deeds. All right. So, in this chapter, we're going to discuss three methods of describing real property. Legal descriptions. Um, we're going to identify four types of deeds used in New Jersey and the effects of of various clauses in the deeds and the anatomy of a deed. Basically, we're going to go over. So, we're going to go over types of deeds, the four types of deeds. We're going to go over the three legal descriptions of land. And let's get started. So, what is a legal description, I guess? Well, it's an exact way of describing real property in a document, a contract, deed, mortgage, or other document that's acceptable in a court of law. A legal description can be combined or altered only by a competent authority, such as a surveyor or a title attorney. Now, deed is the document that we use to convey our rights, title, or interest in real property, whether it's a partial ownership interest or whether it's like air rights or mineral rights, etc. So we have to have an adequate description of what exactly is being conveyed, whether it's being land or right or partial ownership of the rights in that deed. And there are three legal descriptions of land when it comes to land that's being conveyed, and they are metes and bounds, rectangular or government survey, also known as the public land survey system, but let's just go with rectangular or government, which is probably how you'll see it on exam. And we have the plat map of a subdivision, which is a map of a subdivision indicating the location and the boundaries of each of the individual properties. So let's highlight there on the first page, 353, first page of chapter 19, the legal description. And land can be described in three methods: by metes and bounds, by government survey, or a plat map that's recorded in the county clerk's office where the land is located. So, legal descriptions should always include the name of the county as well as the state in which the land is located. We have a lot of municipalities, or we have several municipalities in the state of New Jersey that may share the same name, but they're in different counties. So it's very important not only to put down the name of the municipality that the property is located in, but also the county name, and of course the state. Benchmarks are local permanent markers that aid surveyors in their measurements, which could be based on those benchmarks rather than the actual benchmark, which may be miles away. I'm doing this a little bit out of order from where this stuff is located here in the book, because you should probably understand these items before we start getting into legal descriptions. A measurement, datum is a measurement of elevation, the point, line, or surface from which elevation is measured, according to the USGS. That's the United States Geological Survey, which is a department within the United States government. They're the ones that monitor our planet, the Earth, basically the USGS. That's their job. Their job is to monitor planet Earth. Seismic activity. They monitor the oceans. They monitor the Earth from outer space with satellites. You ever see the weather channels? They often, in the news, if they don't have their own satellites, they're using satellite imagery, and you'll see a logo on it from the USGS. That's the United States Geological Survey, which is a department within the U.S. government that monitors our planet. Now, the USGS says that the that zero sea level is the mean sea level at New York Harbor. It's the average, not counting the outliers from extremes, like the storms and whatnot, where sea levels temporarily rise. The monuments are markers that are placed at the corners of a property that mark its boundaries. They're often made of wood, uh, metal. They could be steel stakes, a ribbon in the ground, or pinned to a tree. You could have a tree at the corner of a property. They're not going to tear down the tree just to put a marker. They'll pin a ribbon to it. So there are three legal descriptions to the land: metes and bounds, rectangular survey, also known as the government survey system, and a plat map. So let's get to the first one here, metes and bounds. Metes and bounds is a measurement of distance and direction. Metes, like meters, that's distance, and bounds, the boundaries of the property. So it's a measurement of distance and direction around the property's boundaries. It's only used in the 13 original colonies, the 13 original states, which New Jersey is one of. So this measurement begins at a definite designated point at one of the corners of the property called the POB, which is short for point of beginning. That's the point at which a surveyor begins their measurement around the property. And it doesn't matter whether they go clockwise or counterclockwise, but they should note which direction that they're going in, and then they continue in that direction until they close the loop, returning to the point of beginning. So it's a designated point at which that measurement commences and ends. The rectangular or government survey, this system is used in Western states. It's not used in New Jersey or any of the 13 original states. It was established by Congress in 1785. It's a measurement so this one is not used in Europe or any of the other countries. It's only used here in the United States because our Congress created it. Prior to that, we were using the land measurements and methods that they always used in Europe and other countries, which was the metes and bounds. So we only use that for the 13 original states. Then after that, we moved to this rectangular survey system that Congress created. So it's a measurement that locates land using principal meridians and baselines. Ooh, like latitude. They're measured by degrees of latitude and longitude. Like airplane pilots and sea captains have been using to navigate the world. Those invisible lines on our planet, on our globe that you've seen in your classrooms and when you were in school. Okay. And they're used to locate areas of land called townships and sections. So a township is 36 miles squared. Now, when they say township, they're not talking about municipalities that are called townships. Woodbridge Township, Edison Township. They're talking about an area, a measurement of land. So when talking about surveys and using the word township, it's totally different than when you're talking about the type of municipal government structure that's being used to manage a municipality. Okay. Those townships, that's a different meaning altogether. So that doesn't mean that if you're living in Woodbridge Township, for example, that doesn't mean that it's 36 square miles. Township in that regard is just how the form of government structure that's being used to manage that municipality. When speaking about legal descriptions, township is a unit of measure. It's 36 square miles. And in it, there are 36 squares, and each square is 1 square mile that we call a section. So each section within a township, which is numbered consecutively from left to right, then right to left, all the way down, is 1 square mile. And just for your own edification, there's 640 acres in a square mile. And then lastly, a plat map is a map of a subdivision that indicates the location of each individual property and its boundaries. And that's located, that needs to be registered in the municipality or the county where the land is located. Now, even though we use lot and block numbers and addresses in contracts and other documents to describe what we're talking about, they are not considered legal descriptions of land. Hell, you know, the United States Postal Service can change your address on you. So it's not a way to locate land. Only these three legal methods are meets and bounds, rectangular survey or government survey, and a plat map. Now, often they combine legal descriptions, meets and bounds, with the plat map. We'll see a little bit further what I'm talking about. But either way, you need to know what a benchmark, datum, and monument is. You need to know the difference between meets and bounds. You need to know what a point of beginning is. You need to know that the meets and bounds legal description is used in the 13 original states only. And a rectangular or government survey is used in Western states. It was created by Congress. And it was it's used to locate areas of land using degrees of latitude and longitude, and has areas to locate areas of land called townships and sections. There are 36 sections within each township. So let's get further into it. Here are some surveyor benchmarks, some examples I'll show you pictures of here. Okay, as you can see, these are often cast into stone. Whether they're rocks out in the wilderness, you could stumble across this, or it's put into a brick in a building, or if it's a sign pounded into the ground like this. These are what survey markers look like. So you could look at this one. It was installed by the U.S. Coast and Geodetic Survey benchmark. Let me see, $250 fine or imprisonment for disturbing this mark. I guess that was a lot of money back in 1933 when they installed it. And look, it shows you the elevation as of this point above sea level as well. Here's another one in the Adirondacks, placed there in 1882, and then it was reset in 2008, it looks like. So you may find a lot of these markers out. You could go out on a hike in the wilderness and may find one of these things set in a rock in a stone somewhere. These are things that surveyors use. That's what they used to measure out the entire United States when they were exploring and mapping out the lands. So as you can see, 1882, this one was set. 1947 on this one. Not sure the date on that. Can't read it. 1933. Here's one that's set in a brick. It just shows you how many feet above sea level you are at this point. Here's one set in 1890 in a rock in the grass. You see that? So they're around. They may look a little bit different, but they're around. Like even Disney got their own with their own Mickey Mouse logo on it. Got one right here. There. Survey mark right here. See, they can go by different looks. Here's some surveyor tools. Back in the day, they used chains to measure areas of land. They'd stretch out the chain. The chain was a specific length. The surveyor would use a chain that's either 33 feet or 66 feet in length. This is why surveyors usually work in two-man teams. So they would stretch out that chain, and then they would do the measurement of the land. Then they would use a tool like this to measure the direction in which they were measuring that land. So Here's some of the units of measure that we need to know. An acre is 43,560 feet in an acre. A township is 36 square miles, or they can be referenced as 6 miles squared, which has sections within it, 36 sections. Each section is 1 square mile. Now, you don't need to know this for exams, but chains are 33 or 66 feet. Whichever one the surveyor is using, they need to note on their survey. So surveyors not only measure out the land, they also draw the maps, So they got to be skilled in cartography as well. They got to be good at math. They're also measuring elevation. Look at this old picture printed on tin, it looks like, because this guy's even fading out away from the picture. Kind of like Back to the Future. All right. So let's start off again here, one step at a time. We're going to start out with that the meets and bounds legal description. It's a measurement of distance and direction around the property's boundaries. It's only used in the 13 original states. New Jersey's one of them. So the surveyor would begin their measurement at one of the corners of the property, one of those definite designated points that they refer to as the POB, or the point of beginning. That's the point where their measurement begins and ends. So the surveyor's measurement can proceed clockwise or counterclockwise around the property, as long as the surveyor notes which direction they're measuring in. And it is going to start and stop at that POB, which is the point of beginning. Monuments are used to establish the real estate boundaries, and you should advise your clients as that are buying this property, who are paying for a survey to get done, to pay the extra money and ask how much the surveyor will charge to pound in a wooden stake or a steel piece of rebar into each of the corners of the property, so that they could visually see where their real estate boundaries are. And now you could tie a string around one to the other and you could see where your property line is. Otherwise, just looking at a piece of paper may be difficult to recognize where your property boundaries are. If you want to put up a shed or a fence or whatnot, you need to be able to locate where those boundary lines are. And that may be a little bit difficult to do for the average person there. Okay. So I got a note here. The real estate agent should advise their clients to shop around surveyors. Don't just go with whichever one that your attorney picks. They may have some kind of business relationship with them. You got to shop around. Ask how much they charge, not just for the survey, but how much they charge to put those surveyor stakes, those monuments into the ground at each of the corner of the property. I've seen some charge as little as $50 per stake, and some charge, although I haven't seen that in quite a while, and some charge as much as $475 per stake that they bang into the ground. Yeah, just a piece of metal rebar that they bang into the ground at the corners of the property.
That's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you may be like, hey, why is it charged so much for just a couple dollar piece of metal or wood to bang it in the ground? Well, you're not paying them for just banging a piece of metal into the ground. Anybody can do that. You're paying them to know where to bang that metal in the ground to find out where your property boundaries are. So, yeah, shop around or have your clients shop around. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
I said that's true.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Let's do this highlight now, page 354, meets and bounds. And then underneath that image, lower on the page, monuments, fixed objects used to establish real estate boundaries.
Okay, got it.
All right, so here's a survey of a property where if you were to zoom in on it, which I don't think I'm going to be able to, but over here it says POB, so it's marking one of the corners of the property. Now, one thing if you notice, here is actually where the curb lies. You see, they're showing you that there's a concrete curb over here, but yet the survey is set back a little bit of a distance off the curb. Why is that? Well, one interesting little factoid, you know that the municipality has a right of way for the first 6 feet of your property. So I guess the surveyor sets back and starts their measurement 6 feet back. Even though your property line will be closer to the curb, they don't start their measurement there. They set it back a little bit. So the point of beginning is here, and then they'll do their measurement all the way down one side. But you see, it's not just a straight line. It goes off at an angle. So these surveyors also, if they're measuring it, it's not just a straight line due north, for example. They'll have to say measure the degrees of how many degrees north or northwest that this line over here is heading out. So you could measure the angle, and then it's on a curved street. So you notice that they're measuring the arc, radius, and diameter of the curve here as well. So yeah, it could get pretty complicated with the map. They're pointing out the structures that's here, the house, the driveway, sidewalks, patios, shed, you know, and then the neighboring property here. Now over here, they're also noting that there's a wood fence, but that wood fence is intruding. It's going over the property line. Now, whose fence is that? I'm not sure. Well, actually, I am because this is a survey of my property. So the back neighbor over here, they had their fence over on my property by about a foot. So I made sure when they told me that they're going to be replacing the fence, I said, okay, good. Make sure you get a survey and you put it where it belongs this time because it's going over on my property. So they set it back a little bit. Now, this is the way that a legal description would read. So I'm showing you a copy of this survey. Let's see, it says, here's how the legal description reads in the survey. In the original survey by the developer who developed this whole area and built all these homes in the area. It says, all that tract or parcel of land and premises situated, lying, and being in the city of Linden, county of Union, and state of New Jersey, which is known and designated as Lot 8, Block 199-106. I guess that was the big major area plot of land where acres and acres where they were building many homes. That was the lot and block. On a map entitled Map of Sunnyfield, Inc., Section 1, Linden, Union County, made by David Ross, professional engineer, land surveyor, Linden, New Jersey, September 1949, and filed in the office of the Register of Union County on January 13, 1950, as map number 335B. The foregoing premises are further described in accordance with a certain survey made by W.M. Sweeney Associates, 1978. This is now where they were building the house here. Actually, no, this house was built in 1953, I think. So that survey, I guess they were just getting another survey done then. So beginning at the point of the southwesterly side of Sunnyfield Drive. Okay, so look, see this south, this is the south and the westernly side of the property. But they're saying beginning at a point at the southwesterly side of line of Sunnyfield Drive, which point is distant so many feet along the various courses and distances of the southwesterly side of Sunnyfield Drive from its intersection. So measuring from the intersection down the block, trying to get to the point of beginning, they have to show you where they're measuring from to find the point of beginning on this property that they're measuring. Southwesterly side of Princeton Road, if both streets were produced to form an intersecting and running line. So wherever they cross and they meet. Thence, after that, thence, that's the old English language, I guess they're using wording from that. Thence, along the said southwesterly side of Sunnyfield Drive in a general southeasterly direction, a curve to the left, having a radius of whatever, 325 feet, and whatever. Okay, so you can see how they do their measurements. South 55 degrees, 30 minutes, 0 seconds, so many feet. Then north, this is the way that the one way that it could read. And this is then to the point and place of beginning. Okay, so they're they're showing you how they're beginning their measurements, how they're finding the property, and getting to the point of beginning here. They're showing you their measurements. And that's the property's address and the lot and block number. And then here you could see that on a tax map. So over here, then you've got the Princeton Road back here, and that's where the intersection is, where they began their measurement. And then they located back one of the corners of the property where they began their measurement and going off in that direction. Then we have the rectangular survey system. The rectangular survey, also known as the government survey, is used in Western states. We do not use that here in New Jersey. They use degrees of latitude and longitude to find areas of land that they call townships. And every township throughout the United States is numbered. And then once they find that numbered township, within that township, there's 36 squares. And then the land is further divided within each one of those sections, which are 1 mile square, because you don't own 1 mile square of land, most likely. So let's highlight page 354. The rectangular survey system, called the government survey method, was established by Congress in 1785 as early pioneers moved westward. This method of describing real property is not used in New Jersey or any of the other 13 original states.
Okay.
Now they go on to talk to you here. The wording in the book is slightly different. I don't think this is the screenshot exactly from this book. The wording is a little bit different, but they're basically telling you that when they talk about townships in surveys, just like I began this class, I started telling you that a township is a unit of measure. it's different from the type of township that's used to manage a municipality. I guess they just couldn't find the right wording for that. So let me see if I can here download some of these latest screenshots. Sorry about that. I stopped the recording and we moved on and on. So we're way past this. So just let me do a rundown really quick. We got the townships and sections are part of the rectangular or government survey system. Each township is 36 square miles. It's a unit of measure, and it contains within each of those 36 within a township contains 36 sections, each 1 square mile. Um, a legal description of land in the government survey system would read the southeast quarter of the southeast quarter of the southeast quarter is 10 acres in size. Okay, it's a little bit different than the legal description in a meets and bounds section, which begins the measurement begins at a definite designated point called the point of beginning and does a measurement of distance and direction around the property. That, for instance, would say moving north due north, starting at the point of beginning, moving due north for 150 feet, then due east for 75 feet, and then due south for 150 feet, then due west for 75 feet, returning to the point of beginning. That would be a measurement of the meets and bounds. The rectangular or government survey is the one that would read like this. The SE quarter of the SE quarter of the SE quarter is 10 acres in size. And each section within a township are measured and are numbered rather, and they start from the top right and they count from left to right to left to right. And here's that measurement. The SE quarter of the SE quarter is 10 acres in size. Basically, the SE quarter, you take the square, the one section, and you quarter it. You draw a cross through it, right down the center. And then this is the southeast quarter. And then you quarter it again. And then this is the southeast quarter. And then you quarter it again, and that's the SE quarter of the SE quarter of the SE quarter, southeast quarter, which is 10 acres in size. That's the way those legal descriptions work. You don't need to know how to read one of these maps. You just need to, you're not a surveyor. However, you need to recognize the legal descriptions by their description. If it reads like this, you know that's the rectangular government survey, which we don't use here in New Jersey or any of the 13 original states. It's used in Western states. It was developed by Congress. The meets and bounds system is the one that they used in Europe and other countries, and they used it when they started measurement here for the 13 original states. And so basically the government survey here, or rectangular survey, uses those principal meridians or baselines, principal meridians and baselines that are separated by degrees of latitude and longitude, those invisible lines on the globe, to locate these areas of land called townships. And then within the township is a section. And then that section further gets broken down. So once again, benchmark is that local permanent marker that aids surveyors in their measurements rather than the actual measurement, which could be miles away, like the measurement of a datum. Datum is a measurement of elevation. However, what is zero elevation? It is the mean sea level in New York Harbor. So when measuring a property far away from New York Harbor, like here in Linden or some other place in New Jersey, or anywhere else in the United States for that matter. At one point in time, you did have a surveyor that measured their way. They measured the elevation, distance and locations, but also elevation from New York Harbor all the way to here. And then they posted a local benchmark that they embedded in the ground or in a rock or someplace that says, as of this point, you are this many feet above sea level. So that surveyors in the future, they don't need to go measuring all the way from sea level in New York Harbor all the way back here again. They just measure from this point to wherever the property is that they're doing the measurement. So that's what they mean by the local permanent marker that aids surveyors in their measurements, which may be based on them rather than the actual benchmark, which could be miles away, which is the New York Harbor. And the datum is important for when measuring condominiums, for example. You could have three-story building, where you have one unit is each one of the stories. But on a flat linear map, it looks like they're all located at the same location. But if you turn that map on its side and measure it in 3D, you could now see, well, the floor begins this many feet above sea level, and then the ceiling is at this point. So now you have that 3D elevation measurement. Or if you want to make sure your property's not in a flood zone. If you're just to look at a flat map and it looks like a river is running through your property, you're in a flood zone. If you just look at a flat map. So if you want to avoid paying flood insurance and having to carry it, you could get a elevation study by the surveyor. And basically they turn that into a 3D map, and then they basically measure it. And you could see that maybe that river that's running through your property is actually in a valley and you're on top of a mountain. No danger of you flooding. So a 3D map would indicate that, whereas a flat map, it would just look like the water's right next to the house, And monuments are those markers, that metal piece of rebar, wood, or a ribbon that could be pinned to a tree or pounded into the ground at each of the corners of the property, so that you can now visualize where your property boundaries are. So if you wanted to put up a fence or build a shed, you could actually know, instead of just looking at a map and not really being able to tell exactly where your boundaries are. You could have the surveyor put markers at each of the corner. You could draw, wrap a string around them, and now you can visually see where your property line is. Okay. And then I hammered this out with you guys too. The meets and bounds is only legal description is only used in the 13 original states. Its measurement begins and ends at a definite designated point called the point of beginning. And so you do that measurement starting at the point of beginning, moving in a certain direction for a certain distance, all the way around the property until you close the loop. It begins and ends at the point of beginning, or commences and ends at the point of beginning. Whereas the rectangular and government survey method is only used in Western states, not the original 13 states. It is not used in New Jersey. It was created by Congress in 1785. That uses principal meridians and baselines separated by degrees of latitude and longitude to locate areas of land called townships. A township is a unit of measure, which is 36 square miles. Different than Edison Township, or speaking of Woodbridge Township. Those are forms of government, forms of municipalities that are used to manage, forms of government which are used to manage the municipalities. When talking about legal descriptions, a township has an entirely different meaning. It is simply a unit of measure, which is 36 square miles. So calling it a township in a survey, it has nothing to do with the name of the town being called a township. Edison Township, Woodbridge Township, has totally different subjects. Okay. Now within each township is 36 square miles. Each one of those square miles is called a section, and they are numbered. A plat is a map of a subdivision which locates the individual properties and their boundaries. So it often combines legal descriptions. Like here in New Jersey, a plat map would often be combined with the meets and bounds legal descriptions of each of the individual properties within that subdivision. So plat maps of a subdivision are to locate individual properties by lot and block number, and combines the meets and bounds measurement of each individual property. Each municipality consists of many subdivisions that were built over the years as municipalities are being developed. Tax maps are basically all the subdivision maps within that municipality. A description of land designated by lot and block number in order to locate on the map. The plat map of a subdivision will show the land divided into lot and block numbers, and they may indicate streets and access roads and utility easements and whatnot, and other easements and rights of way. Subdivision plat for a condominium also would indicate the datum for what level you're on. Here's an example of a plat map of a subdivision within, where is this, Jefferson Township, Morris County, filed in the county clerk's office in 1893. Showing you several different maps here for these little subdivisions. But if you attach all the little subdivisions into one, you pretty soon you got a picture of the entire municipality. Here's another little area of a subdivision where you have one lot right here. This is all one piece of property that was then subdivided. They put a cul-de-sac street on it, 8 individual properties. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They show there's utility easements here. Okay. Here's a better indication showing you the cutout that this is one individual property. And then they put a street on there, the cul-de-sac street. Now this street, they'd have to indicate, are they going to keep it private, or are they going to give it to the municipality and it'll become a public street? What do they call that when they turn it into giving land to the government for a public use, such as streets, schools, and parks? Anybody know? Anybody recall?
Dedication?
They dedicate that land. There you go. All right, so here's another map of a subdivision within my town. See, map, City of Linden. This is map number 25. But you could see there's little indications here that here's where you could find map 24 and put it over here. Find map 26 and that goes on this side, and sheet number 30 or map 30 goes on this side, and you start building up the maps of all the different subdivisions in that area, and you build out. Pretty soon you could rebuild the whole town and show you a layout of all the blocks. So you can see each block is numbered here with in a bold square or circle. You would have each block is numbered. And each block has individual lot numbers. So look at this block, what is that? 356, 336, I think. Can't read it that well from here. But look, lot number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you got all the lots on that block numbered. Here's a smaller block, 304. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 lots on this block. So there could be one house on each one of them. So surveyors are licensed individuals. They prepare these surveys. They shows the location, dimensions of any of the parcel, as well its boundaries and any structures or buildings on the lot. When surveys are used, we use them for conveying a portion of a lot, when subdividing, placing a mortgage on a property, determining legal descriptions, or for construction reasons. Here's an example of the survey of the back of my property here that shows the wood shed in the back, which I'll be replacing soon, but it shows it's 4.1 feet off the property line here, 3.8 feet here. Over here, you can see it shows that the neighbor's fence from the backyard, their wooden fence, is actually protruding onto my property line. See, a survey would uncover such things like that. And this is why you'd want to do that before you buy a property. You want to make sure you don't want to get into arguments with the neighbors. What if that neighbor's shed, because they got a shed right here on the other side of their fence, what if their shed was over the property line? If you just allow them to, you know that it's there and you keep allowing it to continue and you don't get them to remove it, they could claim ownership down the road of that piece of your lot. So you really want to get that taken care of before you actually buy the property. So these surveys are an important home inspection, the type of home inspection that you get anytime that you buy real estate or you convey property. And you can see the surveys are always set back about 6 feet off the property line. So even though our property goes all the way up to the edge, the survey doesn't take, the measurement doesn't start until over here on that survey that the surveyor took. Here's a side view where you can see running along. It's about 6 feet off the property line. Because for that first 6 feet, every municipality has a right of way. This looks like it's a little bit more than 6 feet, though, but it looks like they have a right of way where they can put up utility poles or have gas lines or water mains. That's why they would put like the water shut off right there, the water shut off valve on the external. You don't pay your water bill, or if there's an emergency, they could shut off the water through through a pipe that goes down in the ground. They put a tool down there and they cut it off. All right. So datum is a point, line, or surface from which elevations are measured or indicated. That's the measurement of elevation. And the zero elevation is at the mean sea level at New York Harbor. Now, at some point in time, a surveyor did do the measurement in New York Harbor all the way out to the location of wherever your property is in New Jersey. And instead of having to do that for every survey and do all that measurement and travel, the surveyors at some point in history, they put those local benchmarks, those markers in the ground somewhere that they're maybe attached into a stone or rock or boulder or the street. And they indicate not only where it's located on the planet, but it also indicates, as of this point, what elevation you're at above the sea level in New York Harbor. So the surveyor that's measuring my property here in Linden doesn't have to go work their way back from New York Harbor. Instead, they could work it back from this local benchmark, which could be down the block. And then they just do the measurement of elevation, the difference from that point to my property. And then they could tell you how many feet above sea level you're in, to see if you're in a flood zone or not, or to measure elevation of a condo that's maybe a second floor or third floor unit. So that's what those benchmarks do. Okay, and once again, here's all those benchmark, datum, monuments. Those are the stakes that the surveyor would pound in the ground at each of the corners of the property. And you need to know these 3 legal descriptions of land once again. And this is a good note. Good to take a screenshot of this and just snap a picture of this, because these descriptions are more direct, easy to study from, and all in one place on one slide. Okay, so deed. Now we're done with the surveys and done with going over it again. Thank you for bearing with me for that. Sorry I hit the pause on the record here for the lesson. I just wanted to run it down so that if you guys watch the video again, you'll get all the information. So I didn't rush through it like that when I was teaching it originally. I just had to go over it again really quick. Okay, so deeds. A deed is a written instrument where an owner of real estate intentionally conveys their right, like air rights or mineral rights, etc. Title, that's your ownership, or interest, which could be a partial ownership interest in real property if you own it with others. Parties to the deed is the grantor, that's the seller. They're granting their ownership to somebody, and the grantee, the one who's receiving it. The grantor has to sign the deed in order to be valid, and it has to name the buyer, the grantee, in that deed with reasonable certainty so that they can be readily identified. Deeds do not need to be dated because the transfer of ownership takes place upon delivery and acceptance of the signed by the seller, the signed deed itself. When the buyer accepts it, you're now the owner. even though it's not recorded in the public records. You could record it, but even if you don't, you're still the owner. Deeds must be signed and dated, and the signatures acknowledged, though, before they can be recorded in the public record. What is an acknowledgement? An acknowledgement confirms that the people who are signing the document are, in fact, who they say they are, to prevent forgeries. And so basically, somebody who's acting as a witness of your signature, which could be a notary, judge, attorney, or other trusted person, like an elected politician, trusted persons, right? Before it can be recorded into the public record. So that person either is saying that they know you, or they checked your ID with reasonable certainty, have identified who you are. And deeds are valid even if not recorded in the public record. However, they should be recorded. Okay, there's 4 types of commonly used deeds here in the state of New Jersey. We have our full warranty deed or full covenant and warranty deed, it could be called. Your bargain and sale deed with covenants against grantors or covenants versus grantors act, also known as a limited warranty deed. You got a bargain and sale deed. That's it. Nothing said after that. Basically, because it's a bargain and sale deed with no covenants. A covenant is a legal promise. It's not a bunch of witches. It's a coven. This is a covenant is a legal promise. And a quitclaim deed. Quitclaim deed, you're not making any promises. Quitclaim deed, you're not even claiming that you're the owner of the property if you sign one. By signing a quitclaim deed, you're just saying, I'm quitting my claim of any interests or any claims of interest in this property. Not saying that I have any. Okay? So even though you're saying that in the quitclaim deed, a quitclaim deed can just as effectively transfer the ownership as a full warranty deed. But you're not making any promises. There are no covenants in it. So I wrote over here protections, most to least. So full covenant warranty deed offers the most protections to the buyers, whereas a bargain and sale deed with covenants against or versus grantors act, you're basically saying, as long as I've owned the property, I've done nothing to encumber it. I'm not guaranteeing anybody throughout history that owned it before me. For that, do your own research. Get a title search and title insurance policy. And this is actually the most common type of deed we use here in the state of New Jersey. And then we have the bargain and sale deed without any covenants. It's a straight bargain and sale deed. No covenants. Covenant is a legal promise. That's why I wrote legal promises there. And then lastly, a quitclaim deed. So do these highlights to show that a deed is a written instrument in which an owner of real estate intentionally conveys their right, title, or interest in a parcel of real estate, and the owner who sells or gives the land is referred to as the grantor. The new owner who acquires the land is known as the grantee. Do the highlights, write this stuff, and I will be right back. I left my cell phone, and that's what I use to judge the time to see where we are with breaks and such. So hang tight. You guys do these notes, and I will be right back.
Okay.
Yeah, let's not forget to put that recording back on there this time. All right. So now let's break down each one. So I got this one. This is basically a cleaner shot of just writing this in the book like this. I got it here. The warranty deed, also known as a general warranty deed or full covenant and warranty deed. It offers the most protection of any deeds. We're going to go over what protections those are in just a moment, and then the differences between the different types of deeds. And then you got the bargain and sale Covenants Against Grantors Act, or CAG for short. Also goes by CVG, Covenants Versus Grantors Act. You know, it's kind of like a lawsuit document. You ever see the court documents that say this person against that person? It could say this person versus that person. It's the same deed. It just says covenants against or covenants versus. It's a special warranty or limited warranty deed where the owner states that as long as I've owned it, I've done nothing to encumber this property. but I'm not guaranteeing that anybody that's owned it before me hasn't done anything. For that, do your own due diligence, get a title search and title insurance policy. And then we got the straight bargain and sale deed, bargain and sale deed with no covenants. Sometimes used in auctions called sheriff's deed on top, or they use them for tax sales and such as that. The holder who signs a bargain and sale deed without any covenants is just saying that they have the legal right to sell the property, and they're not making any guarantees whatsoever as to the quality of the deed. And then a quitclaim deed, you're not even claiming you have any interest or even the right to sell the property. You're just quitting any interest or claims of interest that you may or may not have in the property. However, a quitclaim deed can just as effectively transfer the ownership as a general warranty deed can if you have good ownership at the time you signed it. So what are these guarantees, these warranties that are being made in a warranty deed? Well, let's just highlight this. Warranty deed, also known as a general warranty or full covenant and warranty deed, provides the greatest protection of any deed. And then we'll move on to the next slide. Now, keep in mind, it says the covenants in a warranty deed are not limited to matters that occurred during the time the grantor owned the property. They extend back to all previous owners throughout history, throughout the beginning of time, since we started recording land ownership here in the United States. Look at that. Oh, now, you don't need to underline any of these things, but these are the legal promises that are being made in a warranty deed or full warranty deed, which we're going to go over in the next slide. So just let me know once you got this sentence highlighted, and then we'll go from there.
Got it.
Okay. So here we go. We're going over all those details now here. So you got the covenant. These are all the promises, all those covenants that are being made in a full warranty deed. All right, so we have the covenant of seizin. You are seized of the land. It is in your possession and you are the owner of it. You have the right to convey the title to it. That's what seizin means. It denotes ownership and control of the property. Covenant against encumbrances. You as the grantor, the owner of the property, you're warranting that the property is free from any liens or encumbrances other than those that you have informed the buyer about already, and that they are aware of. And you're willing to defend the owner, the title of that property against any other claims against it which have not been disclosed, because you're claiming that there are no other ones. So an encumbrance is a claim by another or liability against real estate, such as taxes, judgments, liens, restrictive covenants, easements, licenses, etc., that may diminish the use or value of a property which the grantee was not made aware of prior to their making an offer to purchase it. The covenant of quiet enjoyment. This is a biggie. It's the guarantee that the title is good against third-party claims against it and will defend it in court against any claims of rights of ownership in that property. So if anybody ever steps forward and says that they have a right or interest in that property or ownership of that property, the seller will defend it at any time in the future and bear the expense to do so. And the covenant of further assurance that the grantor promises to obtain any instruments or documents needed to make the title good to produce that evidence in court. And the covenant of warranty forever states if promises in the warranty ever fail, the grantor will reimburse the grantee for any loss sustained. All right, so you could see how the warranty deed offers the most protections of any deed. However, keep in mind reality. It's one thing to make these promises that seem pretty lofty, right? I promise to make you whole. If any of these promises ever fail in the future, I'll reimburse you for any loss sustained. What if I go broke or die? Doesn't mean a whole lot then, does it? So these covenants are not limited to matters that occurred during the time the grantor owned the property. They extend back to all previous owners as well, throughout history, throughout time. Wow. That's a pretty lofty claim to make, huh? You're going to guarantee me that any time throughout history, there's never been an improper transfer of ownership? Let's see. At this time, there's usually something that I bring up towards the end of the class. I'm actually going to bring it up now. Or should I bring this up now or in the next chapter? Give me 1 second. Let me take a look at the next chapter. Chapter 21. See if I have it included. I do not. So what the hell? I'll mention it right now. So these promises that are being made in this type of deed are a big deal. Here's actually a goof email. I could see it being true, but here's actually a goof email that I've come across, and I often use this. I bring it up in class to show you. We just spoke about the warranty deed and all the promises that are made of what you get with a warranty deed. In a previous chapter, I think we've learned about abstract of title. However, this is something that comes from chapter 21, which we have not gone over yet. But an abstract of title is a condensed history of all the records that can be found about a property to prove that there's never been an improper transfer of ownership throughout time and throughout history, because we could trace it back through the records. So if you made this general warranty deed offer to somebody, here's the claim that you're that's being made. Now, in this goof email, I could see being possibly true. Let's read it and see if you get a little kick out of it. Now, note it has a tone of some religion in it towards the end, but just bear with me. This is not going towards or against anybody. Okay, so it says you got to love this lawyer. Everyone who's ever bought a house will enjoy this. A New Orleans lawyer sought an FHA loan for a client who lost his house in Hurricane Katrina and he wanted to rebuild. He was told that the loan would be granted if he could prove satisfactory title to the parcel of property being offered as collateral. The title to the property dated back to 1803, which took a lawyer 3 months to track down. After sending the information to the FHA, he received the following reply email from them. It says that this is the actual letter. Upon review of your letter adjoining your client's loan application, we note that the request is supported by an abstract of title. While we compliment the able manner in which you prepared the application, we must point out that you've only cleared title to the proposed collateral property back to 1803. And before final approval can be accorded, it will be necessary to clear title back to its origin. Annoyed, the lawyer responded as follows. Your letter regarding title case number whatever has been received. I note you wish to have title extended further than 194 years covered in the present application. I was unaware that any educated person in this country, particularly those working in the property area, would not know that Louisiana was purchased by the U.S. from France in 1803, the year of origin identified in our application. For the edification of the uninformed FHA bureaucrat, title to the land prior to the U.S. ownership was obtained by France, which had acquired it by right of conquest from Spain. The land came into possession of Spain by the right of discovery made in the year 1492 by a sea captain named Christopher Columbus, who had been granted the privilege of seeking a new route to India by the Spanish monarch Isabella, Queen Isabella. The good Queen Isabella, being a pious woman, meaning very religious, and almost as careful about titles as the FHA, took the precaution of securing the blessing of the Pope before she sold her jewels to finance Columbus's expedition. Now, the Pope, as I'm sure you may be aware, is the emissary of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, and God is commonly accepted to have created this world. Therefore, I believe it is safe to presume that God made the part of the world called Louisiana. God, therefore, would be the owner of origin, and his origin dates back before the beginning of time, the world as we know it, and the FHA. I hope you find God's original claim to be satisfactory. Now may we have our damn loan. And it says he got the loan. I thought it was a cute little story there, really real estate related, so I figured I'd share that with you.
Yeah, it's funny.
Oh man. Little history lesson there too.
Yeah.
Something about that just came up the other day too. I forget where it came up. I was talking to somebody. I'm not sure if it was something that came up on the news or where it came from, or if it was a social media thing that somebody made a comment of, and I was talking to my mother or somebody about it, and they were unaware of that fact too. That I think they were talking about we, the U.S., how we stole land. We're living on stolen land. We stole land from the Indians and all this stuff. And it's like, actually, no, we didn't. We actually bought the land from Louisiana and Spain, who conquered the land from the Indians. So your direct claim there, has a little bit of a gap in it. If you want to be accurate and historically accurate, let's see who actually did take the land. Now, throughout history, land in this whole planet's been conquered, and when people make these claims about taking the land, giving the land back to the Indians, which Indians is that? Which Indians did you want to give the land back to? And did they steal it from another tribe? Did they conquer another tribe? Did Indians ever fight with each other, or were they so peaceful that never happened? You know, you may want to take a history lesson and brush up on it a little bit there too, then, if that's your belief, because this is a common thing you often hear online from people. Oh, that's stolen land. Oh, you stole their land. Okay, well, then give up your property to them. People aren't so willing to do that, right? Put your money where your mouth is before you run your mouth. Okay. So that's pretty interesting. Now, the bargain and sale deed with covenants against Grantors Act, CAG or CVG, I think on exams they'll refer to it as CAG, but possibly as CVG, covenants versus grantors, okay? Same deed. The grantors basically state that as long as I've owned the property, I've done nothing to encumber it. But I'm not guaranteeing anybody that owned it before me. For that, you got to do a title search, do your own research and due diligence, and get title insurance to protect you. I will give you a full warranty for as long as I've owned the property, but not for as long as anybody that owned it before me. That's what a bargain and sale CAG, Covenants Against Grantors Act, means. I'm granting you the property, and I'm giving you covenants, those legal promises against me, for as long as I've owned it, but not for as long as anybody previous. So this is sometimes also referred to as a limited warranty or a special warranty deed. It's most commonly used deed in New Jersey, plus title insurance. So let's highlight that there on page 361.
Okay, got it.
All right. And then we have the straight bargain and sale deed. There's no words there after bargain and sale. Do not get lazy when referring to a bargain and sale CAG deed. Do not just call it a bargain and sale deed, because it's a completely different deed from just a bargain and sale deed. There are covenants. In a straight bargain and sale deed, there are no covenants. So don't get lazy and meaning to say this one, the bargain and sale CAG deed, but only referencing this one by saying a bargain and sale deed and not mentioning the covenants. So in this straight bargain and sale deed without any covenants, the seller only says that they have the right to convey ownership, but they're not making any other legal promises, not even claiming that they did not encumber it. So no express warranties as to the quality of the title are being made. Caveat emptor. Oh boy. That is not pronounced caveat emptor. It's pronounced caveat emptor. In Latin, it means let the buyer beware. Okay. So the grantee has little recourse if defects appear later. Caveat emptor. Caveat emptor. Let the buyer beware. Another term you need to know and add to your definition list. I think we'll get this in chapter 21 as well. So this type of deed is often used in sheriff sales, foreclosures, and tax sales. So highlight a straight bargain and sale deed contains no express warranties. However, it does imply that the grantor does hold title to the property and does have the right to convey that ownership interest. That's on page 363.
Okay, got it.
Also on page 363, we're going to highlight the quitclaim deed, which also continues on to page 364, which you could then highlight what it's used for. So a quitclaim deed provides the least amount of protection of any deed. It carries no covenants or warranties whatsoever. It does not imply the person signing it has ownership or any rights or interest in the property, only that they're giving up the rights or claims of interest, without claiming that they have any, of course. It is most often used for simple transfers within the family, transfers of property during divorce settlements, or to clear up clouds from a title. Remember, think of a dark thunderstorm cloud when we hear cloud on a title. Maybe where some documents were not recorded in a public record and we can't link one owner to the next, so we use a quitclaim deed to try to clear that up. It's used to clear up breaks or gaps in the chain of title. So a quitclaim deed can transfer ownership just as effectively as a full warranty deed if the grantor has good title when they sold the property. So what are the requirements for a valid deed? Well, just like any contract, the grantor has to have legal capacity to execute, meaning to sign the deed. They got to be sound mind, legal age. The grantee has to be named in the document with reasonable certainty so that they can be readily identifiable by their name. The consideration needs to be stated. That's the full purchase price. There has to be a granting clause, which is the heart of any deed. It basically states what exactly is being conveyed. It's the heart of the deed explaining what is being sold or transferred, what is being conveyed. It's often followed by the habendum clause. So sometimes the granting clause, things need to be cleared up or clarified And where that would be in the following clause called the habendum clause. Habendum clause always begins with the words to have and to hold. But what is the purpose of the habendum clause? It's anytime something mentioned in the granting clause needs further clarification. For example, if there's two owners of a property, if you and I buy a property together, and you put up 75% of the cash and I put up 25% of the cash, are we equal owners?
Should be, right? Or it depends.
You put up the majority of the cash, 75%, and I put up only 25% of the cash. Are we equal owners, 50-50?
No.
We are, unless you say that we're not. And you want to make sure that that is clarified in the deed. So where would you clarify that in the deed? In the habendum clause. So the granting clause, you would say, hey, we bought this property together, but in the habendum clause, you would say, but I'm 75% owner and he's 25%. But what is the clause in the deed that begins with the words to have and to hold? The habendum clause, the haben to hold clause, the habendum clause. See what I did there? Mispronounced it a little bit. The haben to hold clause, the habendum clause.
Mm-hmm.
Now, legal descriptions of real estate needs to be stated in the deed as well. What are the three legal descriptions of land? Meets and bounds, government or rectangular survey, and a plat map. Deeds do not need to be dated in order to be valid or signed by the buyer unless they're going to record it in the public records. Then everybody's signature needs to be acknowledged before that could be recorded. So let's highlight deeds do not have to be dated in order to be valid, and then write or signed by the buyer unless they want to record it. On page 364.
Okay.
All right. So I put together this slide for you that explains all the notes about the anatomy of a deed. May not be a bad screenshot for you to take either. Either. So the grantor is the seller. They have to be at least 18 years of age or older in order to effectively convey, or the contract may be voidable. You have to have legal capacity to execute or sign a deed. You have to be sound mind and legal age. Unless you're a married minor for exam purposes only. The grantees, the buyer, they have to be named in the deed so that they could be identified with reasonable certainty. They got to be named. The consideration needs to be stated. What are the parties giving or receiving from each other in the deed that is of value? Just like any contract to be valid, there has to be some form of consideration. Consideration can be legal tender, that's cash or mortgage loan. Fair exchange of goods or services. I'm going to do this and you're going to give me that. Or love and affection. So that needs to be accompanied by a letter stating that it is a gift. We'll call that an affidavit. An affidavit is a sworn statement explaining that it is a gift and does not need to be repaid. Granting clause is the heart of any deed, explaining the type of deed, what is being transferred, the title, rights, interests, and how the new owners are taking ownership, either as tenancy in severalty, tenancy in common, joint tenancy, or tenancy by the entirety if they're a married couple. You guys remember those types of tenancies?
Mm-hmm.
The habendum clause is anytime something named in the granting clause requires further clarification, like percentage of ownership if it's not going to be equal. Or if it's a life estate that's being conveyed, who's the remainder man if you wanted to name someone else to get the property and you didn't want it to come back to you necessarily upon that person's death, it could go to a third party who would be the remainder man. That would be named in the habendum clause. And then a description, a legal description of the real estate. Meets and bounds, rectangular or government survey, or a plat reference to a plat map. Any exceptions or reservations that you want added into the deed that say that the property cannot be used for a specific purpose or whatever the restriction is. Any restrictions in deeds that are placed in deeds by private parties are called restrictive covenants. And what kind of estates and land are based on a restriction? It's ownership forever based on a restriction. Fee determinable, also known as a defeasible fee or conditional fee estate, because it is based on that condition. As long as you don't violate that condition, we're good. A signature of the seller, the grantor, and an acknowledgement that provides evidence that the signatures are genuine before they can be recorded. Is the deed good if it's only signed by the seller?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Okay, so requirements to convey the property. Once again, you got to have that acknowledgement that the signatures are genuine to prevent the purposes to prevent forgeries. And there has to be delivery and acceptance. Implied delivery and acceptance is also possible. I know there was a case, I forget who it was, years ago. There was a Motown diva who she was selling her property, and she sold her property to a buyer. You know, dealing with attorneys over the phone and everything, they were handling it all. She just needed to sign the documents, then FedEx them back to the new owner. So she did that. You know, they talked everything over the phone. She signed the documents, put it in the FedEx package. She had a massive stroke and died before she was able to deliver them. So the transfer of the delivery and acceptance occurred. Did the transfer of ownership actually happen while she was alive or not became the argument. Because we know that delivery and acceptance, transfer of ownership by deed only occurs during the lifetime of the grantor. But after they die, how is transfer of ownership taken place? By your last will and testament, right? How are your assets distributed after you die, according to your will? So the kids of this Motown diva that died were claiming that she never sold the property because the deed was never the deed was never delivered because she never put it in the mail. Huh? What do you guys think? Did delivery and acceptance occur there?
No.
Are the kids right? It's stuff is not so clear all the time because the intent was there. They talked about it over the phone. You had both sides' attorneys and both the seller and the buyer over the phone talking about what they were doing, that she was signing the documents. She did sign the documents. She just dropped dead before she was able to deliver them with an unexpected stroke. The kids found it and they said, okay, well, we get to keep all the money that's in the bank account because the buyer transferred the funds over into her bank account already. However, she was unable to deliver the deed because she dropped dead. Do the kids get to keep both the house and the money?
They shouldn't.
I agree they shouldn't. And this was the argument, this was the crux of that case. The kids were claiming, well, she never signed the deed, so we get to keep the house. Oh no, that money in the account, that was hers. Uh, yeah, but you could trace back that they wired the funds to her account, you know? So it was a stupid argument by some greedy kids, basically. The greedy kids that were living off of their mother. They did not win that case. So because of that, that's why I have in there implied delivery and acceptance is possible because it was her implication. You had all these people on the phone, so there's witnesses in that regard. They were all on the phone in multiple phone calls and conversations with each other, and she was going to be delivering those documents. They even have the evidence that the deed was signed by her, but it just never got delivered because she dropped dead. Now it was some Motown diva in New Jersey. I can't recall for the life of me who it was. If somebody wants to do research on it and find out who it was, be my guest and let me know. I recall the story, so that's why I wrote up about it. All right. Now consideration. Consideration. To be valid, all deeds must contain a clause acknowledging the grantor's receipt of something as the consideration. For any contract to be valid, there has to be something of value offered, given, and received. So consideration is defined as something of value offered by one party and accepted by another as an inducement to perform or refrain from performing some act. Consideration must be good and valuable between the parties. That's the legal mumbo jumbo for this. Now, this is split amongst two pages. On page 365, you would see in many states a nominal consideration of $1 or other valuable considerations customary. In New Jersey, however, a deed's not acceptable for recording unless the full sales price is stated. But yet in tax records, we could often see $1 listed. This is usually when somebody just did a refinance or there was a simple transfer within a family and it was a gift. It should be accompanied by a letter stating that it was in fact a gift, that affidavit, that sworn statement. So what is an affidavit? It's another word you need to add to your definition list to study. That's what it is. It's a sworn statement. That's what an affidavit is. And what do you call the document that confirms that the signatures are genuine to prevent forgeries? That would be an acknowledgement. So an acknowledgement is a document that verifies the signatures are genuine. It was witnessed by someone who's checked your IDs or knows you. An affidavit is a sworn statement. Consideration is what the parties give or receive from each other. You see how I told you Chapter 19 has a lot of terms and definitions as well? We have the different types of legal descriptions of land, then we got the deeds and all these other words that are associated with it. Study this chapter too. Another exam heavy, question heavy chapter. Habendum clause. Let's write this in there if you can. Further clarifies terms stated in the granting clause, like percentage of ownership or naming a remainder man. The habendum clause follows the granting clause. The habendum clause begins with the words to have and to hold, and often that itself is a question on exams where they don't even care if you know what the habendum clause does. They could just ask you, you could get questions on exam that says, what is the clause in the deed that begins with the words to have and to hold? It is the habendum clause. But I'm also explaining to you what a habendum clause does. It further clarifies terms stated in the granting clause, like a percentage of ownership or naming a remainder man. So descriptions of real estate, that's just referring to the legal descriptions, which we went over on page 354. All right, let me know when you guys have taken down all of these notes. So I'll give you guys a moment. It's all stuff we've already gone over and that I had in that previous slide, but now you're taking the notes.
Yeah, I got it.
We got the types of estates, restrictive covenants, legal descriptions, and this. Got all that?
Yep.
Anybody still writing or everybody got it?
I'm good, sir.
Okay. So we have to have the signature of the grantor, that's the seller, has to be signed by all of them. Now, an interesting little thing that they have here is a grantor's signature may be signed by an attorney in fact under a power of attorney if they're not going to be around, right? So an attorney in fact is any person who has been given a power of an attorney to execute or sign legal documents for the grantor. In such cases, it's usually necessary for the power of attorney to be recorded in the county where the property is located, because the power of attorney terminates on the death of the person granting such authority. Evidence must be submitted that the grantor was alive at the time the attorney in fact signed these documents. So to prove a person was alive at the time an attorney in fact signed a document on their behalf, they would need to appear before notary public, produce their ID, and the notary will confirm that they have appeared before them on that day. This document would then be added to the public records for recording with the deed and the power of attorney, showing that after the day that they signed something, that owner was still alive. Right? I mean, if the attorney in fact signed a document one day and some day after that, the person who they were signing on behalf of was still alive, that proves that they were still alive. So now this way, if anybody ever does a title search in the future, they could see, well, who's this person and why did they sign the deed? Oh, they were granted a power of attorney because that power of attorney was recorded. And, well, was the person still alive and had the authority to sign on their behalf? Yes, we could see that the owner appeared before a notary after that date. That's how you can make sure that clear title, that nothing was, there was no improper transfers, etc. So let's highlight that what an acknowledgement is. It's to prevent forgeries. So an acknowledgement is a declaration made by a person signing a document before a notary public or authorized public officer. The acknowledgement provides evidence that the signature is genuine to prevent forgeries. Although an acknowledgement is not required to make a deed valid, in New Jersey, all deeds, mortgages, and similar documents must be acknowledged before they can be recorded. And let me know when you guys have that.
Got it.
We all good?
Yeah.
Okay. So, delivery and acceptance. Before a transfer of title can take effect, you got to have that delivery and acceptance. Title said to pass when the deed is delivered. Okay, knowing that, how did we transfer ownership of real estate when in the Middle Ages, when most people were illiterate? They didn't know how to read or write. How did that happen? In the Middle Ages, we had kings and queens and, all these aristocrats, they didn't want the poor people to be able to read or write. You know, if you know how to read or write, then, hell, how do you keep control of a population? You keep them dumb, right? Education is key to equality, all right? Uh, People who don't know how to read or write, or they just like to be dumbed down, um, they're never going to get anywhere in life. They can always be under the control and under the power of others. It's not a modern day type of slavery. It was a type of slavery since the beginning of time. If you have people dumber than you, then it's easy to control them, right? So, how did the transfer of title of a parcel of real estate take place when most people did not know how to read or write? Hmm. Got a little story here for you that I put a little bracket around. You guys remember Schoolhouse Rock? Or are you guys too young for that? There used to be these PSAs, these public service announcements, these very long cartoon commercials after you got out of school and you came home. It was called Schoolhouse Rock, Conjunction Junction, what's your function? What is a bill? It taught you things about English and history and, how laws are passed and things of that nature. And he had these cheesy little cartoon characters. If
Yeah.
if not, look it up on YouTube. You can find a lot of those videos there. Schoolhouse Rock. What is a bill? Conjunction junction. What's your function? A lot of those ones are pretty cool. Anyway, think of those little cheesy cartoon characters and close your eyes as I read this little story about how the transfer of ownership took place in the Middle Ages when most people were illiterate. They did not know how to read or write. Okay, so here we go. In England during the Middle Ages, when few people were literate, transfer of title occurred in the following manner. The seller took the buyer to the field in question, and they walked the boundaries. This was known as the beating of the bounds. Then the seller reached down and took a clod of earth that represented the whole field, and they handed it to the buyer. At the moment when the buyer seized that clod, they became the owner of the land. Today, a document is used instead of a clod of earth, but title still said to transfer at the moment of delivery and acceptance, and the owner still said to be seized of the property. The word season still denotes ownership and control. Can you see those little cartoon characters walking around the property's boundaries? One of them reaches down, picks up a piece of the dirt from the field, and it drops it in the other guy's hand and says, "You're now the owner."
Yeah.
How do you prove that to somebody else that comes around now and says, "Are you the owner?" "Yeah, look, I got the dirt in a bowl in my house." I mean, as you can see, there could be some issues that come up with that kind of transfer of ownership instead of a piece of paper that's signed by the parties, you know. So that's where the word season comes from. It denotes ownership and control. All right, now, let's see. Corporations can convey real estate with a proper resolution passed by its board of directors. This generally requires a resolution authorizing the sale be secured from the stockholders when a substantial amount of the real estate owned by the corporation is being conveyed. And only an authorized officer can sign deeds to real estate on behalf of the corporation. So as you can see here, we got 3 bullet points that, and we're going to highlight the first one. A corporation can convey real estate only upon a proper resolution passed by its board of directors. Now, if all or a substantial portion of the corporation's real estate is being conveyed, it is also usually required a resolution authorizing the sale be secured from the stockholders. Ooh, that could be a massive undertaking, though. Deeds to real estate can be signed only by an authorized officer. That's important for us to understand because they're also the ones who can sign sales listing agreements, sales contracts, etc. If it's listed as being owned by a corporation, the real estate, how do we know that you're the person that's authorized to sign the documents for the corporation, that you have anything to do with this corporation? Well, you need that proper resolution passed by a board of director authorizing the sale and naming you as the authorized officer. That's important for us to know as real estate agents. You can't get a listing from somebody unless you know they're the actual owner of the property, right?
Yeah.
And there's a little note here. The corporate seal need not be affixed to the conveyance unless an acknowledgement mentions that it has to be. And this concludes chapter 19. Let's do the key terms to review. Let's do the key terms to review, and we are done with this chapter. So, there are 2 key terms to review for this chapter. Let's do key terms 1. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
One who receives property through a deed. What do we call the person who receives the property through a deed?
Grantee.
They are the grantee. 9 is A. A deed implying the grantor owns the property, but nothing more.
A deed? No.
Kind of.
Bargain sale deal.
Yeah, a bargain and sale deed. 2 is B. See, there's no covenants after that. Actions that actually transfer the sale. What do we call those actions?
Delivery and acceptance.
Delivery and acceptance. 8 is C. A clause in a deed that makes the transfer. What do we call that clause in the deed that makes the transfer?
Granting clause.
It's the heart of any deed, right? The granting clause. 10 is D. A legal promise.
Covenant.
A covenant. 5 is E. Document used to transfer title to a parcel of real property.
Deed.
Sorry?
Deed.
A deed, correct. 7 is F. Mean sea level at New York Harbor, also local zero elevation point.
Datum.
The datum, the datum, however you like to pronounce it. I'm not sure. It's probably datum. 7, not 7, 6 is G. A deed stating the grantor has not encumbered the property. A deed stating the grantor has not encumbered the property.
Bargaining sales. CAG.
Correct. 3 is H. A declaration to a notary or other official to prevent forgeries.
Acknowledgement.
1 is I. It is an acknowledgement. A marker placed by the U.S. Geological Survey stating elevation. What do we call that marker?
Benchmark.
A benchmark. 4 is J. There you go. All right, key terms 2. Spot at which the meets and bounds description commences and ends.
Point of beginning.
The POB, the point of beginning. 6 is A. A fixed natural or man-made objects identifying boundaries in meets and bounds descriptions.
Monument.
The monuments. 5 is B. One who transfers title by signing a deed.
Grantor.
The grantor. 1 is C. A description sufficient to identify a parcel that is accepted by a court of law.
Legal description.
A legal description. 3 is D. To have and to hold clause explaining ownership being transferred.
Addendum clause.
The haben to hold clause is the habendum clause. 2 is E, correct. A deed providing the grantee with the most protection.
Warranty deed.
A full warranty deed, general warranty deed, or simply a warranty deed. 9 is F. A system for land description used in Western states.
Rectangular survey system.
8 is G. It's known as the Rectangular or Government Survey System. 8 is G. The deed releasing any interest grantor may have without claiming season. What's a type of deed where you don't even claim season? Owner
Quitclaim.
control. Quitclaim deed. 7 is H. Description using boundaries and direction.
Meets and bounds.
Meets and bounds. 4 is I. And that would conclude chapter 19.